You would know by now that PM Lee has called for the elections, and Parliament was dissolved on June 23rd. Polling day is now set for July 10. But how exactly is the general election going to look like amidst this Covid-19 pandemic? And more importantly, how safe will it be? While many elections worldwide have been postponed, a few countries have conducted elections on different scales. In April, South Korea conducted a national election, there was a by-election in the prefecture of Shizuoka in Japan, and the presidential primary elections have been ongoing in the US since February. How were these elections conducted? What measures were in place to reduce the risk of infection? And were they effective? South Korea conducted their parliamentary elections in mid-April, setting an example of how an election on a national scale is possible during a pandemic. In fact, the voter turnout for this election was the highest since 1992. So, how did they do it? Amidst restrictions on face-to-face interactions and mass rallies, candidates had to ditch the boisterous, entertaining antics of past elections. In fact, politicians were told to simply smile with their eyes. Rallies were conducted from trucks with audiences standing a distance away. Candidates and volunteers donned masks and gloves branded with the candidates' initials. Slip covers were also provided for microphones as an additional precaution. Politicians were also seen cleaning and disinfecting public areas to garner even more support from the public. More effort was invested into promoting the politicians through YouTube and Facebook with higher quality videos and humorous, quirky edits to reach out to the younger crowd. Ahead of election day, all polling stations were disinfected. Those not wearing masks were turned away, and all voters had their temperature taken, their hands sanitized, and they had to put on plastic gloves before heading into the polling station. Social distancing was also practiced, the usual stuff. For those found to have a fever, a separate booth was available for them to vote away from the other people. Overall, even though it wasn't as entertaining as previous elections, it was still a colourful one, and with the focus shifting from large in-person rallies to mediums such as online video and social media. A similar shift was also seen in Shizuoka, Japan, where a by-election was held to fill an empty seat after its district representative passed away. With speeches at public venues and mass rallies cancelled, candidates turned their focus to social media, spreading their message with video and live rallies online. But social media is not the most effective in reaching out to the elderly, and efforts to reach voters by telephone were ramped up. The number of polling stations were increased, each with adequate ventilation. Hand sanitizers and gloves were provided, and each pencil was disinfected after a vote. Even the banzai cheer, which is customary after a win, was dropped. Probably because shouting loudly spreads droplets, South Korea has exemplified how even large-scale elections can be conducted if adequate measures are in place. Conversely, a lack of well-laid plans can be disastrous, as seen in Wisconsin, USA, where 52 people tested positive for Covid-19 after the presidential primary elections were held on April 7. They had either been working at the polls or had been a voter. Due to a lack of poll workers, only 5 out of 180 polling sites were open in the state's largest city, Milwaukee, which is home to more than 500,000. This resulted in voters waiting for hours to cast their votes. Safety measures also differed across cities in the state. For example, poll workers sat behind glass barriers in one city, while voters were encouraged to bring their own pens in another. Timing is an important factor as well. The Wisconsin primaries were held at a time when the US was faced with an upsurge in daily infections, while South Korea's election was only conducted after the coronavirus situation was stabilized. Now, back to Singapore, where the GE looms ahead. On June 18, the Elections Department released campaigning guidelines for GE 2020, some of which closely follows what was done in South Korea. As expected, physical rallies and large gatherings of supporters at nomination centres will not be allowed for safety. But what about walkabouts and campaign vehicles? Walkabouts and door-to-door campaigning is allowed as long as there are no more than 5 in a group, with social distancing between groups. While campaign vehicles are allowed, candidates won't be able to speak, live stream, or broadcast any music or videos from it. To make up for the lack of physical rallies, two-party political broadcasts, or PPBs, will be aired on 19 national TV channels, with the candidates' airtime dependent on whether they are contesting in a SMC or GRC. But to prevent people from gathering to watch and discuss the broadcasts, TV and video screenings will not be allowed in F&B outlets in Phase 2. Undoubtedly, this means that all the action will be online. Does this mean we won't get to witness moments like this?
And stand vote for the Reform Party!
Or this anymore? Well, not really, because it's likely that the parties will meet voters through live streaming sessions like these, so we won't be short of many memorable moments for GE 2020. On polling day itself, a whole slew of measures has been mapped out for voting to proceed as safely as possible. These range from temperature screening for everyone entering the polling station, more voting stations, resulting in less number of voters in each station, providing hand sanitizers and disposable gloves for voters, as well as being able to vote outside your electoral division at special polling stations for those under stay-home notices at designated facilities. While it's difficult for anyone to say that there is no risk of Covid-19 infections with an election this year, let's hope that our government's plans will go as successfully as South Korea's did.